Hey everybody, Michael here. Welcome back to the second episode of the long-awaited return of Outside the Cage. I am joined today once again with my fellow MMA partner in crime, Joe Silverstein. Joe, welcome back.
How's it going, Mike? Good to talk to you. We have a stacked show tonight.
Oh, we do. And guys, everybody out there that's listening, thank you guys for tuning back in. I haven't done a podcast in a while, so it's good to be back on. It's also good to get my face off the camera once in a while, so nice to take a break. But anyway, Joe, thank you for coming on once again. Everybody loved you on the last one, so it was only fitting to have you come back. And yeah, it's great to have you on, and we're going to just jump right in. You ready?
I'm ready, 100%.
All right, so let's get into the news and order. So tonight we're going to talk, today anyway, we're going to talk about the reaction to the World Flyweight Championship match between TJ Dillashaw and Cejudo. Then we are going to talk about the ruling of Khabib and McGregor, UFC 235 card, including the two title fights and the welterweight bout between Lawler and Askren. And also we will have, as usual, our bonus content. So let's get right into it with the flyweight championship, Cejudo and Dillashaw. So, Joe, I gotta tell you, I watched that match that night. I was in Florida, relaxed. I was all hyped up, and just as I was getting comfortable, the match started, and it was over.
It was over quick.
It was over fast. Obviously, that match is very controversial, especially with TJ complaining that he didn't lose, and I have a lot to say about that. But before I even talk, I want Joe to go first. Joe, what was your take on this fight? What did you think of it, and did you feel it was stopped too short?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I actually have the surprisingly controversial opinion in this. I don't think it was stopped too short. I think that it was a reasonable stoppage. I probably would have let it go on a little bit longer, but I definitely don't think it was stopped too short. I think that TJ is complaining about this a lot, but if you look, he really wasn't intelligently defending himself. He wasn't knocked out, but he was just on the ground taking a beating, and maybe I'm biased in part because I never really liked TJ. I've always been more of a Henry Cejudo fan, especially because he was fighting for the entire division, so I could be biased. I do want to see a rematch. I would like to see it at 125 again, to be honest with you, because I think the whole point of saving the flyweight division is that there's, interesting fights and dynamic fights at the flyweight division. So as much as it would be nice for Henry to get a second belt, I would much rather see TJ come down and challenge again, because I do think a rematch is warranted based on that.
I agree. And you know something? I am also with the controversial call. I agree. I think that it wasn't stopped too short and I'll explain why. When a man goes down on the canvas and he can't get himself to defend, what is the referee going to do? Just sit there and just let him take the beating and possibly get killed? No. TJ clearly had his hands down. He wasn't defending himself. And for the most part, Henry was controlling the whole thing. So I was watching the fight and I was like, okay, at first I looked at it. My instant reaction was, wait a minute, what just happened? But then they showed the replay and you can clearly see TJ was not defending himself. He was rocked. Now, even though I don't believe he was knocked down, I don't think he was knocked out, I do believe he couldn't defend himself, and I agree with the referee's decision. I do think there will be a rematch because a match of that caliber with that stoppage, this builds for a good storyline, and this will build. Now, whether or not they have it back in the flyweight division again, I don't believe so, because Henry has come out and said he will be happy to fight in, I believe, Dillashaw's weight class. I forgot what he was in. I'm pulling it. Bantamweight, yes, bantamweight. So it would be interesting to see him go into bantamweight. I think Cejudo can actually handle it. But for Dillashaw coming out and saying, "Oh, I didn't lose the fight. He didn't win," dude, take your ass beating like a man. Listen, I get it. You feel the fight was stopped short. I understand, but you can't sit there and say, "I didn't lose." And at the same time, during that night, we had Manny Pacquiao versus Adrian Broner, who did the same thing. Like, I don't understand.
That's a great fight, the Pacquiao.
It was a great fight. I wish we could talk about it on this channel. Well, I wish we could talk about it now, but I think everybody already knows about it. And since we're keeping it in MMA, maybe we'll save it for next time. But
for sure.
But the point that I'm trying to make here is that TJ, you got beat fair and square. It wasn't like your team threw in the towel for you. You weren't defending yourself properly, and as a result, you lost. So my advice, just take your loss like a man, be like Conor, be humble, and just take it and move on. And everyone has to sit here and talk about Conor, this and that. We'll get into that later. But at least whenever Conor fights and he talks shit, he never makes up any excuses. So if you want to at least attempt to be a wannabe Conor, TJ, because I see you dressing up with all those fancy suits and you snake in the grass, just take your loss humble and just move on. That's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think Conor is kind of the perfect segue into the big news we just found out from the Nevada State Athletic Commission with Khabib and McGregor.
Oh,
Did you see the fines and the suspensions? Now, the suspensions, though, people don't realize, but I think the suspensions are only, they're not as long as people think, because it's suspensions not from now, but suspensions from the time of the fight. So the fight was already about, 4 months ago? It was in October?
4 months, yes, you're right, 4 months.
So, so in theory, McGregor could be back in April, May, June, and even Khabib could be back before the end of the year. So I think that, well, it may seem like a lot of time, in reality, it's not as long as we think. That being said, I think that on all ends, it's a little bit too much, to be honest with you. I mean, these, it was wrong that Khabib jumped the cage, but at this point, these are fighters. Let fighters fight. And I don't think to withstand two of the biggest stars in the company from competition, who, by the way, not to knock John Jones, who we'll also get into, these are clean athletes. They got into a fight after the bell rang, after the match was over, and it is what it is. I think it's justified that Khabib's suspension is a little bit longer than McGregor's, because Khabib initiated the brawl, as we all saw. I mean, this isn't me saying it. You can look at the camera footage. And I thought it was kind of funny how Conor was trolling him on Twitter, too, talking about how he slipped in, like, the perfect left hand. That's such a McGregor thing. But, I don't know. I look forward to whatever happens next for both of them. I hope that McGregor, and I think he will, comes back, takes a little bit of a tune-up fight against the Donald Cerrone, and then gets back in that title shot, gets back in title contention.
I agree, and I'm going to say why I agree. But I do have to say, though, let me just clear up the fact, though, Joe. Even though Conor didn't progress or didn't start the event, he did, however, play a key role when escalating it, because if you remember, I love Conor, but you got to admit, Joe, he did talk about his religion with Russia and all those other things going into his family. So in a way, you can't say that, Conor didn't do any of it. He did play a little role, but again, I do agree.
Conor did some crazy promotion stuff.
Crazy promotions. But I do agree that both the suspensions were fair. It was obviously more fair because Conor obviously wasn't the victim in this. Well, nobody was a victim. Only thing that was a victim was just the people watching the show and who was ever in that crowd. And to me, I feel that the Nevada State...
But I don't think there was a... See, that's where I think we disagree, and I think that's okay, because it makes for interesting conversation. But I think that, I don't think there really was a victim. I think that, the crowd was very entertained by it, in large part. I mean, no one, as a direct result of the McGregor-Khabib post-fight brawl, out of the fans and the crowd, was hurt, to my knowledge.
No. I'm not saying that is a victim. I'm saying the only people that were a victim were probably the people of Nevada, because those, I remember they said that there was somebody of importance was there in the crowd.
The governor.
The governor. And the only reason I say he's a victim is because he is the man who owns it. Well, he runs Nevada. He's in charge, and to see his event that he set up, obviously he didn't set up, but to hold it in his state and things to have taken a turn like that, obviously that's where I was going for, him only. I agree.
Yeah, I agree. It's not a good look for the sport.
Yeah.
The sport.
But overall, I think personally, Conor and Khabib got what they deserved. Khabib's freaking out, saying, "Oh, I don't deserve to pay that much money." Look, man, you made your choice when you jumped that fence. You made your choice when you decided to throw your mouthpiece at his team. You could have been the bigger man. Look, I love Khabib. I love McGregor. Obviously, I like McGregor a little more. I'm not trying to say my bias is coming in here because I'm not biased. But if you look at it from a point of view, Khabib, you were the better man. You won the fight. You basically shut Conor up. You had all the talk you could talk. You go on Twitter to say, the only thing that matters is me tapping him out. You're entitled to say that because you beat him. But just remember one thing. Your talking trash will always be overlooked when everyone brings up how you jumped the cage. No matter what anyone says, no matter if they agree with you, no matter if they even think you were wrong or right, no matter what anyone says, the only thing that will ever be brought up anytime they're in a convo with you is you jumping that fence. And you can say all you want about how I beat him. You have bragging rights, but the fans have bragging rights to say what you did was either right or wrong, and that's in their terms. But just remember one thing. No matter where you go, no matter where you fight, everyone will always remember you jumping that cage.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it was really something that he shouldn't have done. And, Also it's a regrettable decision because I think the whole Conor McGregor thing would be past him, quite frankly. I mean, I'm a huge Conor fan. I like Conor much more than I like Khabib. But that being said, I mean, Conor lost that fight decisively. Conor would have had to work his way back up the rankings. And I think it's even, I think Conor's best move, people are talking about the best move for him. I think Cerrone's probably the best move because I'm not trying to be insulting or disrespectful to Cerrone's talents, but I think Cerrone's probably the safest and easiest fight for McGregor. I mean, if you look at what's out there, a rematch with Max Holloway is no walk in the park, ladies and gentlemen. So that's no walk in the park.
Yeah, there is. There's none.
With Khabib, that's off the table right now because Tony Ferguson is next. I mean, I think Ally Quinta is another good fight for Conor. I think Kevin Lee isn't a bad fight for Conor. But he needs a winnable fight. He can't fight Khabib right away. He can't go in and try to do something crazy and do a catch weight with GSP. He has to just, do his thing, take a fight where he's the betting favorite, train hard, and give us the old Conor McGregor and see if he still has it. I don't even think he should do the trilogy fight with Diaz until after he fights Cerrone for a warm-up.
Exactly. I 100% agree because Conor is not the same. You look at his presence when he was in that press conference, you could see, even in his trash talking, something was wrong. This was a personal fight, and now that it's over, I think that it's time for him to knock the rust off. He should not, I agree, he should not be fighting Khabib right away. He should move on. And again, we'll talk about Cowboy Cerrone. I think that would be a perfect fight. Those two have respect for each other, even though they've said some things, but they both want to fight each other. And I would love to see that. I agree. Nate Diaz, that should not be happening until he gets a wake-up match and gets back into the game. So overall, hell, even I'll take him fighting Jeremy Stephens from UFC 205, who called Conor out that night, saying how he was the toughest, hard-hitting 145-pounder. Well, unfortunately for Jeremy, you went back down to featherweight, so you can't talk shit now. So that's all I gotta say about that. But yes, Conor definitely needs to get back into the game with a nice, winnable opponent, and he needs to get his endurance, his mostly his. I don't know how to say it, Joe, but he needs to get back his self-confidence.
He needs to get that it factor back.
Manufacture, yeah. Because if you watch his body language that night from the fight, you can see he was not the same he used to be. Khabib was more energetic and ready to go. Conor was just walking around. Obviously, that's how he does in all fights, but you can see it in that fight.
Yeah, I felt in watching it, too, something about it. There was a certain vibe in the moment where I felt like he was just kind of going through the motions of it. It was a little show. I think he kind of just thought he could wing it, and then he got in there, and then that was kind of the moment of holy crap, I'm in there with the best in the world.
Yeah, exactly. So, all I'm going to say about this matter is this. Conor, you're a great fighter. Obviously, you don't have to prove anything to anyone. You've done all you've done. Just get back into the game and just keep working hard. That's all I got to say. Now let's move on to UFC 235, Joe. This is going to be a very, very interesting card. And I got to tell you, I have watched a couple of UFC events. I watched UFC 230. I've watched 231, 232, 233. And even though John Jones coming back may have been one of the greatest moments for me as a fan, watching him going up against Anthony Smith, also Tyron Woodley, Usam, and the main fight, which I think should have been the main event or the co-main event, Ben Askren versus Robbie Lawler. Those are going to be one of the greatest, if not one of the most amazing fights that I'll ever watch on a pay-per-view, only shy of Conor's, obviously. But we're going to start with our predictions. We're only going to focus on the three big main events. We could talk about the women's fight, but I feel that even though we will talk about it, we do have to address the big three. So let's start off.
Well, with regard to the big three, I just want to say it's really important to note, I think that this is the most consequential card in the history of the welterweight division by far. By far. I mean, when you look at these three fights, any one of these guys could go on to challenge for the world title. Mm-hmm. Any one of these guys could go on to be world champion. I mean, it's really an amazing and incredible thing. So let's get into it. What do you think about the Woodley fight?
All right. Well, Tyron Woodley right now, he's been champion for quite a while, I have to admit, and so far his momentum has been pretty good. Even though he is getting older, he's 36 years old. Going up against somebody like Kamaru Usman, I think that's going to be an interesting fight because both men are Obviously, they're brawlers. It's going to be an awesome fight. But the thing that's making me feel that Kamar has a little more advantage is because of the age, his height, and also his reach. And I'm pulling up the records right now, and looking at his age, he is 5 years younger than Tyrone. But Tyrone has proven he can fight a great fight. In terms of height, he is 3 inches taller. I mean, that doesn't play a big factor, but look at the reach. A 2-inch extra reach. Now, to me, obviously, reach doesn't matter, because if you look at the Khabib and McGregor, even though McGregor had a bigger reach, it didn't play much. But when you're talking about in a welterweight fight with Tyron Woodley, you're going to want to get as much advantage as you can over him. And I feel that Tyrone, even though he may come out a winner, and I do predict that he may win this fight, I don't think it'll be an easy victory. I think it's going to be a tough fight for him, because I feel that Usam is going to give him one hell of a fight. Hell, it could push to the 5th round if this fight plays out.
Yeah, I think it'll definitely be a competitive fight. I have Woodley winning. I was actually fairly surprised that Woodley beat Till in the fashion that he did by that knocking him down and then choking him out. I mean, that was basically almost like a double finish to not just knock him down, because at that point, it was pretty close to a stoppage right there. But to get almost not just a submission, but almost like a symbolic knockout. So that's the deal with Woodley. I think it's a little bit upsetting, to be honest with you, that we're not getting Woodley versus the interim champion, Colby Covington, only because we're getting to a point now where I feel as though the interim titles are becoming even less significant than they were 2 years ago.
Absolutely.
I remember, 2 years ago when we started first implementing these interim titles, everyone was saying it's devaluing the world championship, what have you, all these different things. And I think such is the case, to be honest with you. I think you can't give someone an interim title without having them compete against the champion. I think, Covington Woodley would have made maybe not as much of a entertaining in the ring fight, but certainly promotion wise, I mean, those two on the mic would have been hilarious. But again, it's just about protecting the belts at the end of the day.
Absolutely, I agree. And the interim championship, in my opinion, even though they're saying it's degrading, I still feel it's a step towards the championship. Because even if you say,
if done right, I agree with you.
If done right, exactly. Had it been,
but the problem is, when you neglect an interim champion and just totally shelf him in place of someone else, I think that's where, it really hurts the brand, in my opinion. It really hurts the brand.
I think it does, too. They had a lot of potential for the interim championship, but they instead chose to do this type of implementation for the belt. But honestly, though, maybe, who knows? If Tyrone wins, then we may see that fight. But until then, we gotta only hope and speculate at this point. That's all we can do. But I am definitely thinking this is going to be a good fight. I think that this will definitely see if we can push Tyrone to his limit. Personally, I haven't seen him being pushed, and I'm hoping he can get pushed. So let's see what happens. And final thoughts, Joe?
Well, my final thoughts are we also have a huge main event on that card, too, with John Jones and Anthony Smith.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what I was about to transition right into, the main event.
That's be a big one.
That is going to be a big one. John Jones, Anthony Smith. Now, Anthony Smith is a veteran fighter, in my opinion, personally. I think he is a veteran fighter. He has had a lot more experience in the ring. But with that said, though, I don't think he can pull off a victory against John Jones, and I'm going to say why. John Jones, when he got back against Gustafsson, even though I would have loved to have seen Gustafsson win, John Jones was just more fit. He was more athletic. He was the better fighter. In my opinion, he was the better fighter. And I'm looking at John Jones, and yeah, okay, look what's going on with him and this steroids crap. Look, it may never end. We don't know what this guy is going to do with his life, but look, all we could say from an athletic point of view, he is a tremendous and probably one of the greatest fighters in the division right now. And it's only a matter of time before we see DC versus John Jones once again. It's only a matter of time. But the thing that I don't see this fight happening, and I'm not underestimating Anthony, because even John Jones said, you don't underestimate people. So I wouldn't sleep on Anthony, but at the same time, I don't think it's going to be a fair fight just because of how much John Jones is more athletic, more versatile, learning more different types of moves and maneuvers. So for me, I'm going with John Jones.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the pick. I'm with John Jones, too. I think that Smith, the only thing he has is that he could catch Jones, because Smith hits hard. So, I mean, if I'm Smith, I'm looking to catch him with that one big punch. And if I'm Jones, I'm actually looking to take the fight to the ground. Even though I think Jones is a much better striker, if I were him, why even risk it? I think that John Jones' wrestling is far superior without question, and his jiu-jitsu is far superior without any kind of questions to it. So if I were John Jones, I would try to make this a grappling contest. I would try to get him on the ground and put him away early, put him to sleep early. With regard to DC, I think that we always keep circling back to DC, and everyone keeps circling back to DC. So I think it means everyone wants to see it happen. I think it's going to probably happen at heavyweight, and I think that at heavyweight, DC has a much better shot at winning than he does at light heavyweight.
I agree. And you know something?
He's harder and he's healthier. John Jones at heavyweight and is a little bit past prime per se. He's a little bit out of his league. But Daniel Cormier at light heavyweight is out of his natural position in the world, because really DC cuts a lot of weight to get to that light heavyweight. He weighed in heavier than Stipe did for when he moved up for that super fight to become the champ. So, when you take that into consideration, when you take into consideration how he slept Stipe in one round, how he dominated Derek Lewis, and how he could take shots too, I think that DC at heavyweight has John Jones' number.
I think so too. And if you look at, also, they were building up the whole Brock Lesnar crap. Well, look what happened with that. Lesnar's back in WWE, so don't be expecting a Brock Lesnar match until he loses that belt. So we're not even going to talk about Brock Lesnar. Trust me, we've got enough problems with him. But, yes, I do think you're right about DC. They're both probably out of their leagues at this point, but the thing that I notice about both athletes is after that loss, when Daniel Cormier lost to John Jones, it only just fueled him to get better, for me anyway. And he's gotten a lot better. Submission, ground and pound, fighting at the top. And to be fair, even though Daniel Cormier is much heavier and a lot more in pounds per se, he can still fight a fight. He took Derek Lewis, and to me, I think that even though he's no longer considered the champ, because I believe they've already crowned the light heavyweight to John Jones, he is still going to be the champ because he was able to defend it. So, that said, back to John Jones and Anthony Smith. Like I said, final thoughts on that. I think that Jones will take the victory.
Yeah, I agree with you. I have to agree there, definitely.
But now we get to a match where I personally think should have been the co-main event, and I think a lot of people wish, but we understand, title matches do have to be main event and co-main event. But this match is probably something I would have never have dreamed seeing happen. Well, not this match in particular, but this particular fighter at this day and age and at this stage in his career, I never thought I would see this. Ben Askren making his UFC debut against Robbie Lawler. Joe, 3 words. Oh my Lord. Yes, I am censoring out. But what a world we live in right now to be a UFC fan, to be an MMA fan. What a world.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's very, very entertaining. I think we're in a great time to be a fan of the sport. And I think that, we went through a little bit of a rough 2018 as fans, and now it's good that a lot of people are coming back. A lot of people are coming into the fold. Ben Askren, as you know, has been in the sport of MMA for a long time. It's just that we haven't gotten the privilege of seeing him in the UFC. I think that he's going to come in. I think that he's going to dominate the fight with Robbie Lawler. I think there's a lot of great fights for him. You're talking about Darren Till. You're talking about we were talking about Woodley before. I think all these different people are just awesome matchups as a fan. I can't wait to see them, to be honest with you. I really can't. I think he brings an entertainment factor. He's very fun to watch at the press conferences. And again, just because you didn't fight in the UFC doesn't mean you're not skilled. There's other promotions out there.
Yeah, exactly.
And he finally got to the UFC. It's interesting to see he kind of has like a similar feud going on with Dana White that Tito Ortiz had back in the day of like the kind of like fighter promoter beef. But it is what it is. I think that I hope he wins and I hope he does well.
I agree too. And you know something, Joe? Even if their beef still goes on, at the end of the day, Ben Askren is going to have some respect for Dana White, and Dana White will have respect for Ben Askren. So I feel they'll stomp out that beef before the end of 2019. But regardless, I'm giving this match to Ben Askren. There's no way. I'm not saying there's no way he can be beaten, but looking at who he's going up against and looking at what Ben has done in his other territories and looking at just how great he is as a wrestler and on the ground, and just how overall he's amazing. I really am honestly gotta say, I really am excited for this match. I have never been this excited for a fighter other than Conor McGregor to see fight in the MMA. I have seen many fights, and even though I have been excited, I have never been this excited, because Ben Askren, if you guys don't know, he was a former one welterweight champion and Bellator welterweight champion in different divisions. He is also an NCAA division wrestling champion. He's in Division 1 to be specific. And most of all, the man is only 34 years old. And the fact that most people in their 30s start to get that little age problem, the man can still kick with power. And on top of that, 18-0. Now you're probably saying, oh, look at Khabib, 27-0. Well, all he needs is 9 more fights and he will catch up with Khabib. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But the idea of Ben Askren, one of the greatest fighters from his former promotion that he was in, being part of the biggest trade in the MMA sports, now we're sitting here talking about his UFC debut. Originally it was scheduled for 233, but because they couldn't get no main event, they had to cancel it and move it to 235, because now we have to wait an extra month. But the idea that we're going to see this match happen, the fact that we're going to see Ben Askren in a UFC ring, if this doesn't get your blood warmed up, I don't know what else will. And I gotta say, I really hope that he gets into title contendency within less than a year. I really hope that. And I will stand by that statement. And that's all I gotta say about that.
And I think that, again, I think Ben Askren, just like you said, he could still go, and he'll be able to go for a long time. I couldn't agree with you more about him.
Mm-hmm. Well, that covers everything important of the show, 235 and Dillashaw and McGregor Khabib. Now it is time, obviously, as we promised, the bonus segment, where we get to come in with fantasy matchups or anything of importance as a bonus to you guys. If you guys have made it this far, hit that like button. And also, while we take a quick 5-minute break before we start up the bonus content, I would like to pass the microphone over to Joe Silverstein, where we have a very special announcement. Joe, the floor is yours.
Oh, for sure. Thanks so much, Mike. I just want to tell everyone very briefly. First of all, to Mike, he's doing a great job. Thank you for the opportunity to come on again. I just launched a very nice clothing brand, Vulcan Fitness. Vulcan Fitness is activewear. It's T-shirts, it's muscle shirts, it's tank tops. It's all made in the USA to support the American economy. You could buy it online at www.vulcanfitnessinc.com. Or just check out on my Instagram, Joey_Silverstein. You'll see all the links. And I plan on also sending Mike a shirt down the road once we start getting everything set up in the near future. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It is going to be. And I am also proud to announce also that I will be working with Vulcan as I guess you can say, a promoter once your business starts to pick up, Joe. Joe has agreed.
Yeah, Mike's going to be a brand ambassador for Vulcan. And Mike's going to be the brand ambassador for Vulcan. And I'm looking to get also, he's in an interesting league of people, because we already announced a couple of them. We have Jessica Lee, a very successful New York City model who's doing this, and she has tons of followers as well, and she's been in magazines, and she's actually modeled for Puma. I'm trying to get a specific UFC fighter to also be a brand ambassador. I don't want to give any names yet because I don't know how likely it is to work out, but we're in the process of figuring it out. So, Mike, you're in good company.
Thank you, Joe.
I'm in good company to have you, too. So I just want to say thank you to your listeners again. For taking the time to hear about this.
Thank you, Joe.
Fitness.
Thank you, Joe, for giving me the opportunity to be a part of Vulcan. I look forward to see where we go as both your company, my YouTube channel, how we can grow both together. And also, guys, and I will be linking Joe's website in every one of my videos. If you are interested in checking out any of his products, go right ahead. I will be mentioning him in every video. And also, like he said, a brass ambassador. I will definitely be helping him out, spreading the business. And Joe, just like I say now to everybody, if you ever need any advice or anybody good with promotion, you know where to go. I'm always the man of talk.
Thank you, Mike. And you know what? We have to take the opportunity just because we like Tom. Tom's in this too. Tom Zapata is going to be an investor in this. So I just want to shout out Tom and make sure he gets some credit for this because Tom's jumping on the boat. We're figuring out some paperwork now. And Tom's on the team as well. He always said, sure people know I'm on the team, Joe. So I just want everyone to know Tom is on the team with us as well. And he's a quality guy.
Good to hear. And that is great to know. All right, well, now that we've taken our little break and we've got to spread about Vulcan, now it is time to get into the bonus content. Bonus content number 1, Joe. Obviously, we were talking about this throughout. Conor McGregor and the Cowboy Cerrone. What do you think? Will this happen? Well, obviously, it probably will at this rate. And what do you think of this kind of matchup with Conor McGregor and Cowboy Cerrone? Do you see this being a fantasy matchup for the ages? Do you see this being a comeback story for McGregor? What do you see this being?
I think that this could be a truly legendary and classic fight, honestly. I think that this is a fight fans fight. It's going to be a stand-up war. Neither man's going to look for takedowns and to smother someone on the floor. Neither man's going to be boring. I think Cerrone's going to come in swinging. I think McGregor's going to do his thing and weave and throw back. I think the real question going in for McGregor, because we saw his timing was a little bit off with the striking in Khabib. Can he get back to being the old Conor? Can he get back to striking quick, striking accurate, timing very well his shots? And if he can, and if he could have that focus and that obsession like he used to, and if he could get his mind right, and if he could get the timing down again, fighting is not like riding a bike. Fighting, one day you could have it and the next day you lose it. So we don't know. If he comes in the Conor McGregor that knocked out Eddie Alvarez, that wrecked Jose Aldo, that beat Chad Mendes, that won the Nate Diaz rematch, if he comes in that Conor McGregor, I'm confident he picks apart Donald Cerrone. I really am, and I don't think it'll be that difficult. However, if he comes in the Conor McGregor we saw against Khabib, he has to really watch out because, getting hit with the right hand from Khabib dropped him. Picture getting hit with a right roundhouse kick to the face from Donald Cerrone. Very cautious. Very cautious.
Very, very cautious. I agree. Cowboy Cerrone is, again, another legend of the sport. He's been in it longer than, I think he's been in it longer than Conor, has more fights in his track record. For me, I don't care who wins the fight.
And also, just really quick, Mike, because it's a really important point, and you kind of alluded to it, is the fact that Cerrone also has, I think, the most wins in lightweight history. People are acting like Cerrone is this bum. Cerrone, or maybe even in UFC history, he has a lot of wins within the company. He's been very successful. He's not to be underestimated.
I know, you're right, exactly. I've never slept on Cowboy, and I never will. I plan no intentions to. So I think that this will be a match for the ages. Again, this is a fan fight's dream. Cowboy and McGregor have had some interactions in the past, but they've put that behind. They seem to be on good terms, and considering they are both promoting Proper 12, it looks like Cowboy and McGregor seem to be on good terms. So I don't see this being a grudge match. I see this being a fun fight for both fighters, but Conor should definitely have to try to get a win on this one, because if he suffers another loss to Cowboy Cerrone, then things are not going to be looking too good in his favor. But again, this is not a match where there's grudges or anything involved. This is just a pure fun fight for the both athletes and also to prove something for each other. So that's what I think. And Cowboy has come out and, he has a family, he has a child, so we all know who he's fighting for. But I'm interested to know who Conor is fighting for. And you know who I think he's fighting for? Himself. I think that answers my question.
I think it's a very valid point. We know that Conor has the kid too, but the thing is, though, Cerrone's family, in terms of money, isn't set for life. So to your point, Cerrone is largely fighting for his family. He is largely thinking about their financial well-being. For Conor, that's really no longer a factor, supplying for his family. Sure, it's nice that he could get more and more for his son, but I don't think he's too worried about that. I think Conor does have to do it for himself at this stage and do it not about money and not about pop and circumstance, but do it about his legacy, because ultimately, what does he want to be remembered as? Because he's at a crossroads in his career right now, and if he keeps losing, people, for better or for worse, will look at him as a flash in the pan. Now, I don't think that's a fair statement, even if he never wins another fight, because I think he's done so much for the sport.
Agreed.
But that's what people will criticize him as. Whereas if he could come back, mount a win against Cerrone, get back the title, then he has a claim to longevity and a legitimate claim to being the best ever.
I agree, and I was about to say that. I think that the Conor should be fighting for his legacy, keep it going, because even though he won against Eddie Alvarez 3 years ago, then he went up against Floyd Mayweather, not 3 years ago, but it feels like it almost, Joe. It feels like 3 years. Time is flying fast. Then he went up against Floyd Mayweather, lost that fight, came back, wanted to fight Khabib, lost that fight. So right now, he lost 2 big fights, even though the Floyd Mayweather fight shouldn't really be considered a serious fight. It was a money fight, but it still counts as a loss. But losing to Khabib, it definitely is not looking too good in his favor. But I personally believe that he should be fighting to keep his legacy alive and also keep it to show everyone, I'm still going. I don't care about the money. I know I got the money, but I want to keep fighting. And he has said this, but I want to keep fighting for the love of the sport and the love of the fans. So I think that's...
I agree, and I also think that a Holloway rematch can be very interesting. I don't see how there's any upside for Conor because he already won that fight. Holloway's only gotten better, and he's coming to the peak of his career. You saw what he just did to Brian Ortega a few months ago.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Conor is in a slope in his career, so I'm glad that it looks like he's taking the direction of fighting Cerrone as opposed to taking like a really ridiculously challenging fight like a Holloway. And I think that, again, those championship fights, let them come, but let him get a win or two. Maybe he could even fight one more person after Cerrone. Maybe it could be, a Kevin Lee or an Ally Quinta or the Diaz rematch.
Well, the thing with the Diaz rematch, though, is that Nate Diaz has come out and publicly said he has no intentions of fighting ever again, and also his brother. So if they were to get
for a trilogy, though, for Conor McGregor money, he would do it.
That's what I was about to say. For the money, maybe he would do it. But even if they did the trilogy, I still wouldn't want to see that right away. He would definitely have to get through this fight with Cowboy Cerrone, and he would definitely have to prove himself. I think that this is the fight they need to go with. I think this is a smart choice, and I think that this will definitely set the path if McGregor wins.
For sure. And let me ask you, if he doesn't win, do you think that this is probably the end of his career?
That's a tough one.
I'm a big McGregor fan, but I think if he doesn't win his next fight, there's a legitimate case to be made that this is the end of his career.
You know something, Joe? I have to agree, and I think so, because he's lost 3 in a row. If he loses this one, he's lost 3 in a row, and considering how it looks like the game is starting to change, and McGregor's starting to be just like how the legends of yesterday and stuff like that, they could start making arguments that he just can't keep up. So I think if he does not win this fight, then it's a good question of should he just hang up the gloves. But
yeah,
we'll have to see and wait and find out what their plans to do with Conor. Obviously, they're in talks now. But now let's get to the second bonus content, and this is a very good one. The idea of Khabib going to welterweight and challenging Ben Askren for a fight. Now, before we even talk about titles, because we don't even know if Khabib will get it. Well, obviously Khabib will get a title shot. He is obviously undefeated. But let's imagine for a second he comes to welterweight and he challenges Ben Askren. Now, Ben Askren has said he will get on Khabib's back and chant USA every time he sees a fight, basically pressuring him to challenge. And Khabib's father has come out and said he will be going to welterweight. They'll be working towards welterweight. So if he goes to welterweight and he challenges Ben Askren, do you think that will be the most legendary fight of Khabib's career, but also the most legendary fight in the welterweight division?
You know something? I think it has a lot of potential to it. But with wrestlers, you never know. It's not like strikers. And even with strikers, you never know. But with wrestlers, you could either get a true wrestling clinic with ground and pound, with guard passes, with takedowns, with clean boxing, standing up. Or you could get like a very boring, a very slow-paced, one man just trying to lay on top of the other and kind of wear him out over the course of a couple of rounds. So I think that it could certainly be awesome or it could be very boring. And I think that it's all up to really just the type of fight that they choose to fight when they're in there.
Yeah, I agree.
I will tell you this, though. It is something I would be very excited for. It is something that I think would be extremely challenging to Khabib, who's undefeated. So that in itself makes it a very intriguing fight, makes it a very special fight, and a meaningful fight at that. Because whenever you could have an undefeated fighter push to their limits, I don't know, Ben Askren, he's much bigger than Khabib. He's arguably just as good as a wrestler. I don't think that he's going to let Khabib get him in a position where he can't move his legs and where Khabib is leg riding him and ground and pounding him from the top. I think that, Khabib would have a real problem on his hands, a real fight on his hands with Ben.
I think so too, but you know what the thing is? I think that fight will be a fight in match made in heaven, because for a while now, Khabib has dominated in UFC. He's 11-0 in UFC. His record outside of it is amazing. He's a wrestler. But here's the thing, though, Joe, that everyone knows. I don't know if you've known this, but Ben Askren's arsenal, his entire layout, everything is identical to Khabib. Now, whether or not they definitely make this a boring, slow-paced match is remain to be seen. But the idea that both fighters have the same layout as how they train, the same layout to how they fight, and the idea that they're both the best wrestlers in MMA to date, both wrestlers and both fighters for that fact, I think personally that is a match made in heaven. That's like what's going on with WWE right now with Becky Lynch versus Ronda Rousey. Becky Lynch is the number one women's wrestler in the division right now. She's probably the number one wrestler of the fans, and Ronda Rousey is an unstoppable force. She was always great, but to see both number ones of each side coming together always makes for a good match, which could make the first ever women's main event at WrestleMania, which I will be attending. And I gotta tell you, when you put two of the best fighters in the world in the same ring, you're probably going to get one hell of a match, but you're also going to get a legacy match.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you. And I think also to your point about, very quickly about the Ronda thing, because I haven't followed it as much, but I did see the Ronda Becky Lynch segment on YouTube. And I haven't felt that way about watching a wrestling promo since I was a kid. Like, the intensity behind the Becky Lynch promo and the whole thing with Ronda Rousey, I just thought it was a very interesting segment. And since it's a bonus, I didn't mind kind of shouting them out for that too, and kind of going along with you in that direction and just saying, props to both women. Maybe they could even main event WrestleMania. Mm-hmm. And I think that's going to be a great thing for women in sports in general.
Yeah, women in sports in WWE have been treated like a joke. They used to do those bikini shows, to the lesbian storylines, to just showing off their bodies. But now you're seeing a new turn. Now, it wasn't always the case with every women's match, but you could see back in the day with the Attitude Era. But the fact that we're getting these matches that are reaching these potential main eventers, like now we're seeing, it only makes sense that these women kind of change the game. And it's very interesting...
By the way, just speaking of changing the game, you saw the Nunes Cyborg fight last month?
Oh, did I?
I mean, that was a crazy fight. That was an insane knockout, and I think that was something that surprised a lot of people.
I think that was a surprise, too. And I honestly, I don't know what's better, watching that match or watching Gustafsson, but wow, that was something.
I wasn't watching that live. I was actually out, and I checked my phone. I was in the car, and I said to one of my friends, I said, "Could you believe this?" And they said, "What?" And I said, Chris Cyborg got knocked out in 51 seconds. I mean, that's just another world.
That is just something. Honestly, I don't know if she'll get a rematch right away, but I know that she's a great fighter. And I have no question in my mind that she'll definitely bounce back from this.
For sure.
And one last bonus content, because obviously we were running out of time, and we have a little bit of extra time for this freeway. I want you to name, in your quick 1 minute, name 5 fighters who you can see fighting. Let me pull it up. Interesting. Okay. Pull up 5 fighters you would like to see Conor McGregor or Khabib Nurmagomedov fight next year, or this year. Who would you like to see? One of the 5.
Do you want me to name 5, or are you going to give me a list?
No, you name 5. You name 5.
For each. Okay, so for Khabib, I want to see him fight Woodley, GSP, Connor, Ben Askren, and Tony Ferguson.
Mm-hmm.
For Connor, I want to see him fight Ferguson, Khabib, Donald Cerrone, Nate Diaz down the road if he's ready. We're talking about fiction right now. We're not talking about like what's most realistic in the moment.
Exactly. Yes.
And for that last one, I want to say either Holloway, but honestly, I kind of want to say Aldo because I just want to see him get into a real fight with Aldo and just knock him out clean and really just put to bed any questions that was a fluke.
Honestly, I'm going to be real with you, Joe. That top 5 that you gave me, honestly, is identical to mine. It's literally, Khabib's is identical. But for Conor, with that last one, I wouldn't put it a tie. I would just go right with Aldo, and I agree. Because Aldo is building himself back up since that. Because he really suffered when that fight happened. Everyone was like, oh, you knocked out in that long. And I think that fight of his knockout is still the fastest knockout in a UFC fight. And that is a big stain in your legacy. But to see him coming back and bouncing back, and he has said he wanted McGregor, I would love to see a rematch. I think that they should work towards that because that would be interesting to see, like you said, was it a fluke or was it an actual win? So,
yeah, for sure. And for Aldo, I think that's the only thing for his legacy at this point that could really save him. I mean, he went from being the greatest pound-for-pound fighter of all time to being, I hate to say it, but like an afterthought and a joke. I mean, I don't think Jose Aldo is this bad, fighter. I think he's this, he's your average UFC roster fighter now.
Yeah, now they've treated him, but his record is still great. He's 27-4. Tomorrow night, he's fighting on UFC featherweight. He's fighting Monaco, and
I'll be honest with you though. I'm not trying to knock Jose Aldo. I wish him the best, and I liked him. After the McGregor feud, even though I rooted for McGregor, but just the whole thing with the laughing when Mayweather beat him, and like celebrating someone else's losses instead of actually going out and getting your own victory. I think between that and just he's been getting finished a lot. I mean, if you look even before the McGregor fight years ago, he arguably lost the decision to Chad Mendes. I mean, he got the decision very close. He got knocked out by McGregor, got knocked out by Holloway twice, and then he fought a bum and he won by landing a lucky body shot, and he was crying because he was so happy that he won. So I mean, for me to look at him as one of the greatest ever. And also, I have to be honest with you, also the idea that people talk about Holloway as the greatest ever, I think is a joke in terms of featherweight division. Because how could Holloway be the greatest ever of the featherweight division if McGregor beat him? And McGregor was champion and knocked out the guy that it took Holloway to knock through him. It took Holloway 3 rounds to knock out Aldo.
Exactly.
13 seconds. Conor beat Holloway. Conor beat Aldo. Conor beat Mendes. Conor beat a stacked division of featherweights. So, Khabib's obviously not in that equation. I don't see how you can make the argument that Conor is not the greatest of all time. I don't know why there's this universal consensus from sports analysis that Max Holloway is the greatest featherweight of all time. I like Max Holloway a lot. I think he's a very talented guy. But to say he's the greatest of all time, I think is a little bit of a stretch.
Yeah, I agree. Holloway, though, remember when he fought Aldo, that was like they did a rematch and Holloway beat him twice. So that was another part of Jose Aldo, his decline. Because if you look at his matches breakdown, in 2018 he fought once and he won. He won in the first round against Jeremy Stephens with that liver punch. In 2017, he went against Max Holloway twice and lost both times. Then, in 2016, he went against Freddie Edgar in a comeback fight after losing to McGregor. Even though he won that fight, it just got worse because the next year and then the year after that, it just got worse and worse. But now he's building himself back up. And keep in mind, Aldo is a great fighter. And if he gets back to fighting Conor, I think that will bring back some of that whole heated fight that they went against each other. It's very interesting. It's a very good idea, but we just got to see what happens tomorrow night. Because tomorrow night, he will be part of the featherweight co-main event in UFC Fight Night 144. I encourage everybody to check that out, even though everyone says, oh, Fight Night's not good. Trust me, Fight Night is always great, even though it's on ESPN+.
You there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Joe?
It cut out. Could you hear me?
Yeah, I could hear you. I can still hear you, Joe. You okay? Hold on 1 second. Sorry about this, guys. Technical difficulties. 1 second. See, 1 second. Sorry about this, guys. We are going to get this up and running real fast. There we go. We'll make sure we get the audio back. And we are just ringing it up. All right, you still there, Joe?
Yeah, the audio cut out. I hope we didn't lose that, did we?
No, we didn't lose it. It's okay. We're still going.
Okay,
It was just a small
cool.
technical difficulty. There's nothing to worry about. But anyway, we're going to wrap this up now. I think we've done enough. Definitely a lot shorter than our last one we did, but it was still much fun. Joe, I got to tell you.
Was it shorter? I thought it was, what was it? I thought we did a good hour on here just now, didn't we?
We did it. We're just shy of an hour. We're 10 minutes away from an hour.
Okay, I gotcha.
But
we're both two very busy college students, too, who are trying to be entrepreneurial as well. So, it's a busy lifestyle we live.
Exactly. And it's also with me, YouTube, trying to manage and everything. Yeah, it's confusing and stuff at all, but you know something? At the end of the day, if you're ever able to micromanage your time, you're good. But listen, enough of talking about that micromanage stuff. People on YouTube, they don't really care about that. Actually, no, Joe, I'm sorry. This is the longest one we did. The last one we did was 39 minutes. So this takes the cake.
Oh, it was, right? Yeah, I said it didn't feel short. I mean, it was a great conversation, but I looked at the time. It said 50 minutes. I said, how long did we go for the other one? I didn't think it was over an hour.
Nah, we did a lot better in this one. So
yeah.
I got to say, Joe, this was great. I'm always happy to have you on. Every time you come on, well, the first time you came on, it was great. The audience, they all loved it, Joe. Everybody messaged me after that podcast. Everyone's been asking me to tell you this question, and I'm going to ask you right now. Would you consider being a part of Outside the Cage once a month after every UFC pay-per-view? Well, not every UFC pay-per-view, but after certain pay-per-views where we could discuss. Would you
Mike, I would come on whenever you want. All you need to do is shoot me a text, and I'll come on your show.
You heard it, folks. You heard it here. So that puts that to end. And also, all my subscribers have been dying to ask you something.
Yes.
What do you prefer, UFC or Bellator? I don't know why. They just all wanted me to ask you that.
Oh, UFC, no question.
Okay,
UFC.
That puts that theory to sleep.
Yours is UFC too, right?
What happened?
Is yours also the UFC?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, nothing against Bellator. I think Bellator is a great place for people to go, for fighters to go when they're a little bit over the hill, but they still have something to give. And, why should a Chael Sonnen, why should a Fedor, who unfortunately just lost, but, why should these guys have to go fight 20-year-old guys in their prime? So I think it's a great opportunity for people who gave a lot of the sport to get something back out of it. So I'm not Bellator. I just prefer UFC.
Exactly. Well, again, we got to wrap this show up. Joe, thank you once again for coming on. Again, you are more than welcome to come back on to do episode 3 if you see fit. And also, guys, again, I want you all to please support Joe. Check out his podcast. Check out Vulcan. I'll be leaving the links in the description. You'll be seeing Vulcan in every one of my videos. Definitely try to support the cause. Give him a help. And also, guys, once again, if you enjoy all these segments, keep tuning in for more, because if it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't be doing this right now. And I thank each and every one that watches and subscribes, not just for my tech videos, for everything basketball, but for just being a subscriber. Thank you guys for always tuning in and making these things possible. Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good one. God bless.
All right. Thank you guys for watching, and peace.